Okay, so let's talk about goals very quickly. I just want to emphasize what the unique goals we have are. And the most important one, enable parents and their children to form a guiding relationship. And that's a special type of relationship that should typically develop, right, if you don't have a child with a lot of neurological vulnerabilities that get in the way of it and keep it from happening. And it's the most important role of parents, right, to guide their child's mental and self-development and indirectly their neural development. And nobody else does that. Teachers can't do it. Teachers are incredible people, but you can't ask them to take parent role, right? Therapists can't do it. Only parents can play that role. And what we know from very, very clear research is that in 100% of cases in autism, in fact, if we want to define what is universal about ASD, it's that the child is born with sufficient, unfortunately, inborn genetic and prenatal vulnerabilities that make them unable to benefit from this guiding relationship. And if you look at the research, it's very clearly demonstrating that right now, coming from all over the world. Okay, so that's the one. Can we enable parents and children to form one when it doesn't develop naturally? Remember, we're not talking about any problem of the parents. We're assuming our parents are very capable, but it takes two people to form a guiding relationship. It takes the infant child to be able to contribute to it and give feedback to parents too. You know, so no matter how good you are as a parent, right, it doesn't matter if you have a child who is on the way to being diagnosed with autism. That intuitive, natural guiding relationship doesn't develop. And that means that we need to be able to find a way to help parents to provide their children with the knowledge, the mental skills. I don't know if you hear a lot about minds and mental things here, because there's a lot of emphasis often on behavior, but we know that autism is a mental processing disorder. It's not a behavioral disorder. Every bit of research demonstrates that, every bit. And of course, a neurological disorder. The productive habits and the mindsets to thrive in the real world where things are unpredictable, information is complex, right? Things are stressful. And also to give each person with ASD a way to pursue a pathway for lifelong growth. ASD is a chronic condition. We're not expecting it to be cured. We're not interested in amazing recoveries in a year, you know. We want to give people with ASD a way to guide themselves as well as they get older, as they move into adolescence and adulthood. We want to give them tools, including online tools, so they can continue to develop. You don't have to stop developing. You know, this idea of early intervention is wonderful, but you don't need to stop at 4 or 5 or 15 or 25, right? You can keep learning throughout life, and we know that's true. Okay, now I want to show you what our operating principles are. RDI works through consultants, through trained consultants who help families, help parents and children to develop a guiding relationship. And they work from these principles. First of all, they have to keep their focus on what is going to make a difference in the long run. It's nice to see instant things. It's nice to be able to use the child's strengths. In other words, often children with ASD are very good at static things, and they can learn rote things. And you can get them to speak and say a lot of rote things and build up vocabulary words. And that looks wonderful if you're feeling desperate and you've not seen any changes and you're wondering if anything can happen. But in the long run, it's not going to make a difference. What's going to make a difference is if you can fundamentally help them to learn how to use their mind, how to develop a real self, and ultimately how to impact their neurology, their neural connectivity, their neural integration, right? So we have to keep that focus. Doesn't mean we don't recommend other things, or sometimes people just need to see something right away, but it means we have to keep the emphasis on what's going to make a difference for this person when they go out into the world and they have to survive and they have to thrive in the world. Second, our consultants are very focused on knowing that people are going to enter into intervention with different degrees of developmental readiness. Everyone's not the same. You can't offer one program that fits all, right? The kids are going to have little different levels of readiness. Families are going to be ready for different things. So we have to provide multiple entry points, multiple ways to start that match what the family needs at that time. Third, there's no such thing as a generic guiding environment. What we know is that these children have vulnerabilities. They have issues that have gone on with their neurology, potentially with a whole variety of things that combine. And those things are very different. They can be motor issues, they can be sensory issues, they can be social cueing issues, they can be, you name it. And each child comes in, and even before they're diagnosed with autism, they come in with those problems that have contributed to the breakdown, to the lack of formation of that guiding relationship, but they're unique for each child. There's no one thing that contributes to a diagnosis of ASD. That's what we're learning from all of the prospective sibling research and the retrospective family research, is that it is a cumulative model that is unique for each child, each infant, if you will. And so when we're working with people, when we're starting to work with people, we have to acknowledge that unique profile that they're coming in with, that child's coming in with. Right? If we're going to make them more available for a guiding relationship, right? We have to understand what is creating an obstacle for them, and we have to reduce that. And that means we can't be the ones always doing everything. That means there's an incredible important role for speech pathologists, for OTs, for whether it's nutritional, whether it's this, whether that. But it's got to be based not on one size fits all. Like everybody does not need the nutritional counselor. Everybody does not need this person, but depending on what that profile is, that unique profile that's keeping that child from benefiting from what their parents have to offer, that's what we have to address. And we can't do that, but we have to help figure out what that is, what that unique profile is, right? So while we're teaching parents to modify what they're doing to make it easier for that child to benefit from guiding, we also have to acknowledge the need to help that child's brain to be more available to benefit from guiding. It has to be both going on at the same time. And for some kids less, some kids more, each child has to be different. We have to take the time to understand that. It's not something that's easy. Each child is a unique version of ASD, each one. Okay? We have to maintain progress along a developmental pathway. And we are very committed to a developmental model where each mastered step that you take provides the foundation for a new step, okay? So mastery builds on mastery, step by step. And along with that, we have to continue to do what we call dynamic assessment. Assessment cannot be a one-time thing. It's a continuous process where as that child and as that family makes goes one step ahead, one little step at a time, because we want to success breeds success, right? That we continue to assess what's going to work the best, what is the optimal next step. There's a lot of areas that you can focus on, as I said, and you have to stop and think through what is the reasonable next step to go. You can't do it out of a manual. So you can't have one size fits all. You can't say every child's going to have this, this, and this. Or once you've achieved this, everybody should go on to this next step. You can't do a sequence like that. Yes, it's easier to say it that way, but it's not true. It's not real. Family consultation program is really the first step in the larger RDI program, where we're restoring an initial guiding relationship for the family. And I broke that down to 4 steps: restoring, understanding, preparing, and becoming. Just to make it simple. Most of the time we have families, not all the time, but our parents are feeling pretty devastated. They've lost their sense of empowerment. They've lost their sense that they can actually do this natural stuff that parents do. They often feel very dependent or needing somebody else to solve things for them or think for them because they feel so discouraged. They've often lost hope. But very often they're in a crisis state, even years afterwards, where they're still looking for the answer. You have to look ahead. And if you're in a crisis, you can't look ahead by definition. You're still, you're scrambling around looking for what to do. You're very reactive. You can't be proactive. You can't be, thinking about what's the priority right now. You try and do everything. You've got to find a pace, right, of parenting, a pace of being a family that works for everybody. Understanding, assessment, understanding. I like the word understanding better than assessment. Assessment sounds very clinical. It sounds like we're doing it to you. Understanding means that we are working with you to try to understand what is going on with this very complex child. So understanding has to be a process that we're involved in. And when I say we, I don't mean just consultants and parents. We bring in, rather than referring out, we like to bring people in. I don't mean physically bring them in. I mean, psychologically bring them in and join us, other professionals, in trying to understand what we're getting confused with. And saying, look, we need you to help us with this. Not just do a bunch of tests, but help us figure this out. And we engage together and we learn together through mistakes, through successes. It has to be a learning process. But you got to focus on the process. If you get too focused on the end point, you are not a good guide. And you also have to focus on giving people opportunities to think, no matter who they are, to think, to decide, to wonder, to have a little bit of uncertainty, not scary, and then figure it out. No matter where they are developmentally, just one step at a time, right? You're not doing things to them. They have to become co-participants. Yes, you are in the lead as a guide. Parents have to be. They're the experts. They're supposed to know a little bit more than their kids about the world and how their mind works. But there have to be a sense of co-participation right from the beginning. You have to alter your pace, and this is one of the first things we teach parents to do right from the beginning, so that you and the child both have the experience of being in a process, of moving together, how it feels. If you're doing things too fast or you're doing things to get things done, you miss out on the experience of what it's like to move together in what we call a synchronous manner, which we know even for adults is incredibly powerful. Releases endorphins, is an incredibly powerful feeling. When two people, not when you're dragging the kid along or you're just doing what reacting to you, but when the child is taking actions to move along with you and you're moving together as a unit. And we have to simplify communication because we're not interested in getting words out, a lot of words. We're interested in real dialogue, where you have to stop and process what the other person is communicating to you and think about it. If it's fast, you're not able to think about it. If you're not good at it, you're just going to respond. You're just going to react to it. We're not interested in getting the right words out. We're interested in teaching people that a big part of communication is thinking. That thoughtless communication to us is not communication. Becoming is not being perfect. Our parents learned that it's okay to make lots of mistakes. It's okay not to be, no parent is perfect, right? You learn more from your mistakes anyway than you do from your successes, and our parents learned that. We make mistakes too. We plan and we prepare. This isn't just about laissez-faire in life, just doing these techniques. It's learning how to think as a guide and to be planful and prepared for an engagement. We call them guiding engagements. So you don't have to do it all day long. No parents in a guiding role all day long, right? But you can, given your life, some of our parents are home with their kids. Some are working. It's very different. Some have more energy than others. When can you engage? You try to figure out when you have the energy and the resources to engage. You plan and prepare, and from each engagement, you try to learn and evaluate yourself and become a better guide, and also learn to evaluate where the child is and what they need. And then children are becoming mental apprentices. And they're taking more responsibility for the engagements with them and other people. They're trying to learn from people's perspectives. They're actively learning to acquire knowledge from others. And they're building enough trust to want to engage with challenge, not to be afraid of it or not to survive it, but to go after things that are challenging, not overwhelming, but challenging for them.